Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head, again and again, long after it ended? Maybe it was something someone said about you, a compliment that made your heart swell, or a careless remark that cut so deep it still stings today. Strange, isn't it? How words, just vibrations in the air, can echo for years in your mind. You could be lying in bed at night, the room silent, but your inner world is roaring. A single sentence, overheard or imagined, loops on repeat. Why? Because, as Neville Goddard taught, your imagination is not a passive faculty. It is the creative power of God within you. And when that imagination gets emotionally charged, especially through inner conversations, it doesn't just affect how you feel. It shapes your reality. You see, your subconscious mind does not filter. It does not judge, question, or verify. It simply accepts. And one of the most potent ways it receives information is through inner speech, the silent, invisible conversations you have with yourself and with imagined others. Neville called these inner dialogues the real authors of your world. Think about it. Haven't you noticed how a single critical remark, replayed often enough, can shrink your confidence? Or how remembering a joyful exchange can make you walk taller, breathe easier, feel unstoppably alive? That's not just memory. That's mental rehearsal, and your body, your energy, your choices, they all respond to it, as if it's happening now. Here's where it gets even more extraordinary. What if that power, this looping mechanism of your mind, could be harnessed deliberately? What if you could choose what conversations your subconscious absorbs? What if you could overhear people talking about your success, your healing, your transformation, before it actually happens? That's not just fantasy. That's the foundation of Neville Goddard's method. He taught that the imagined experience, when emotionally accepted as true, is more powerful than the facts around you. Because reality, as you know it, is always catching up to your state of consciousness. So let me ask you, what loops are you running right now? Are they feeding your fears, or scripting your future? Because whether you realize it or not, your subconscious is listening. Always. Most people go through life reacting to what they see, never realizing they are caught in a feedback loop, responding to the world without ever questioning how that world took shape in the first place. But Neville Goddard turned that logic on its head. He didn't ask you to respond to what is. He asked you to imagine what could be, and to live from that vision as though it were already real. At the heart of Neville's teaching is this truth. Imagination creates reality. Not metaphorically, literally. Your world is not a fixed object outside of you. It is a mirror reflecting the assumptions you carry inside. And the most potent vehicle for those assumptions? Conversation. You've likely heard that your thoughts shape your beliefs. But Neville took it further. He said, your inner conversations, what you mentally hear, rehearse, repeat, are the seeds of manifestation. You aren't merely thinking your way into a new life. You are speaking it into being. Silently, constantly, subconsciously. Here's the paradox. You don't need to shout affirmations to the sky. You don't even need to convince yourself with logic. All you need is to overhear what would be true if your desire were already fulfilled. That's the essence of what Neville called the overheard conversation technique. It's simple, but it's not simplistic. Instead of affirming, I am rich, you hear two colleagues whispering in awe, did you hear? She's making $20,000 a month now, doing exactly what she loves. Instead of trying to force belief, you eavesdrop on success. You listen to praise, admiration, celebration. And the more you hear it in your mind, the more your subconscious begins to accept it as fact. This is not delusion. This is creative cause. The subconscious mind does not need physical evidence. It only needs emotional repetition. If you feel it deeply and repeatedly, it becomes the new command. It begins to rewire your beliefs, your self-image, your emotional baseline. And eventually the world must conform. Because, as Neville said, the world is yourself pushed out. But most people don't realize they're already using this technique against themselves. They overhear their own doubts, their imagined critics, their deepest fears. What if I fail? They'll never take me seriously. I'm not good enough. These are also overheard conversations, but they are pulling you deeper into the very state you want to escape. So the question is not, are you using this technique? The question is, what are you feeding your subconscious to overhear? Because your life is echoing back what you've been listening to on the inside. There is a moment every night when the veil between the conscious and the subconscious begins to thin. Your body relaxes, your thinking slows, and your awareness hovers gently between wakefulness and sleep. Neville Goddard called this sacred window the state akin to sleep, And in this delicate threshold lies the key to reprogramming your entire reality. Why is this moment so powerful? Because in this state, the critical filter of the conscious mind, the part of you that doubts, analyzes, and resists grows quiet. And when that filter softens, the subconscious becomes highly suggestible, ready to accept whatever you impress upon it. It's in this state that your imagined conversations are no longer just thoughts. They become blueprints, instructions, commands to reality itself. Neville taught that feeling is the secret. You cannot merely think about a new life, you must emotionally occupy it. You must dwell in the experience of the wish fulfilled as though it is already your truth. And what better way to do that than through a mental scene so vivid, so alive, that it stirs your heart as if it were real. This is why the overheard conversation technique works so powerfully here. Right before sleep, when your conscious defenses are down, imagine hearing someone talk about you. Not from your own mouth, but from theirs. Feel the excitement in their tone, the admiration, the awe. Maybe it's a friend saying, "I still can't believe how fast everything changed for her, she's living her dream." Or a colleague saying, "He just got promoted again. Everyone's talking about it." You're not visualizing yourself saying these things. That's too active, too controlled. Instead, you're letting the scene play out as if you're overhearing it. Why? Because your subconscious accepts it more easily when it feels like a spontaneous event, like a memory being recalled rather than a desire being forced. And the magic is this: your subconscious doesn't care if it's true. It doesn't ask for proof. It doesn't check your bank account or your resume. It only responds to repetition and emotion. If you give it the same inner scene night after night, charged with real feeling, it begins to rearrange your inner state, and by extension, your outer world, to match that scene. Neville said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and sleep in that assumption." Not just visualize it, sleep in it. Let it be the final energy, the last impression you hand over to the infinite intelligence within you. Do not drift into sleep with worry, with regret, or with doubt. Drift into sleep with the sound of success echoing in your mind. Because once your subconscious accepts it, reality has no choice but to follow. Most people make the same critical mistake after visualizing or imagining their desired reality. They wake up the next morning and begin doubting. They ask, is it working? Why hasn't anything changed yet? What if I'm just making this all up? But this very act, this obsession with evidence, is the thing that strangles the seed before it ever has a chance to grow. Neville Goddard was clear. Manifestation is not a process of forcing or chasing. It is a process of planting and trusting. He compared imagination to sowing. You plant the idea, the assumption of the wish fulfilled, and then you rest in the assurance that it is done. You don't dig it up the next day to see if roots are forming. You let it take shape beneath the surface, where all true creation begins. This is where most people go wrong. They think the creative act ends after the imagination session. But in truth, what you do emotionally afterward determines whether that seed is nourished or destroyed. When you begin to worry, question, or try to make it happen, you're no longer aligned with the state of the wish fulfilled. You're back in the state of lack, the state of it's not here yet. And the subconscious doesn't respond to logic or effort, it responds to state. And state is shaped by what you feel is true, not what you want to be true. Neville insisted, you must feel yourself into the state of the wish fulfilled, until it has all the sensory vividness and emotional intensity of reality. And once you've done that, let it go. Not in apathy, but in confidence. Confidence that the law is perfect, and that the unseen bridge of incidents has already begun forming. The truth is, your only job is this: know clearly what you want. Construct the imaginal scene that implies its fulfillment. Enter into that scene emotionally, especially in the state akin to sleep, and then live as though it is already done. This doesn't mean pretending or faking it in front of others. It means internally refusing to contradict your new assumption with worry, disbelief, or desperate action. When doubt comes, and it will, you don't argue with it. You return, silently and firmly, to the imaginal act. You re-enter the scene. You remember who you are. You become once again the version of you for whom this is already true. Because in Neville's world, and in the deepest truth of existence, what you are conscious of being becomes your reality. Not through hustle, not through effort, but through alignment, through faith in the unseen, through the discipline of assumption. The bridge will build itself. The outer will follow the inner. But only when you stop trying to control the how and start honoring the truth that imagination creates facts. Eventually, the world catches up. Not because you forced it, not because you worked harder, begged louder, or wished longer, but because you became it, internally, quietly, consistently. This is the unseen magic of Neville Goddard's work, the understanding that you do not attract what you want. You attract what you are conscious of being. When your inner world shifts, the outer must respond. It has no choice. Reality, as Neville said, is your consciousness objectified. That means the conversations you overhear in your imagination, the emotions you feel before sleep, the assumptions you refuse to abandon. These are the architects of your fate. And once you've assumed a new identity on the inside, the laws of this universe are bound to reflect it. So, how do you know it's working? You don't look to the outside for confirmation. You look to the stability of your state. You begin to notice that your reactions are changing, that doubt doesn't bite as hard, that your body walks differently, that you start making choices in alignment with the version of you who already has it. These are the early whispers of transformation, the invisible yet undeniable signs that the bridge of incidents is unfolding. And yes, strange things begin to happen. People show up you never expected. Conversations align. Coincidences multiply. You overhear something in the real world that mirrors what you imagined. And in that moment, you understand what Neville meant when he said, "The world will mirror your assumption, down to the last detail." But even then, even when results begin to form, you don't become distracted. You don't chase the evidence. You stay rooted in your inner world. Because that's where the power lives. Not in the phone call, or the money, or the relationship, but in your state of being, which gave birth to all of it. Neville often reminded us that faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. That means your job is not to convince the world. Your job is to remain faithful to the imaginal act, to hold it as true, regardless of appearances, until the world bends to your inner conviction. So tonight, as you prepare for sleep, do not drift unconsciously. Enter that sacred state with intention. Let your final thoughts be drenched in the sound of success, the warmth of fulfillment, the joy of arrival. Let your subconscious receive not your fear, but your faith. Not your doubt, but your decision. And then sleep like the version of you who already has it. Because once that version takes root within, the outer world will rise to meet it. Exactly as Neville promised. Exactly as you imagined.